The entire secret of divine purpose and planning is hidden in this sign. Will is active, purpose is passive. Welcome. Let us align and focus with purity of motive, inspired by a loving heart. Right spiritual motive involves merging of the personality self-will into that of the sacrificial will of the soul. Should you be viewing this recording or listening at another time, be certain to align with this group gathered to build a substantial field of group support for your endeavors in dissipating glamour and dispelling illusion.
As we move forward in our study and use of the formula of the dissipation of glamour, today we endeavor to deepen our understanding of the act of will. So let us keep in mind the nature of the will. The secret of the will lies in the recognition of the divine nature of man. Only this can evoke the true expression of the will. It has in fact to be evoked by the soul, as it dominates the human mind and controls the personality. The secret of the will is also closely tied in with the recognition of the unconquerable nature of goodness and the inevitability of the ultimate triumph of good. This is not determination. It is not whipping up and stimulating desire so that it can be transmuted into will. It is not an implacable, unshakable, immovable focusing of all energies in the need to triumph. The will pouring forth from Shambhala at this time of the Vesak festival. Our aim is to embody spiritual discernment, practice positive harmlessness, and eventually achieve a state of divine indifference. As we dispel illusion, dissipate glamours, devitalize Maya in all our relationships.
Before we begin, let us align as soul and as a group, and see our group approaching Master Dwalkul's study. I am one with my group brothers and sisters, and all that I have is theirs. May the love of the one soul pour forth to all. May the energy of the one soul lift and aid all. May the thoughts which the soul creates reach and encourage all. May the energy of the divine self be spread abroad in our hearts, through our groups, and throughout the world. Let us align as soul with all those studying and meditating with Master Dwalkul. Breathe in effortlessly and easily. See our group moving through the field of lotus blossoms, lining our path toward Master Dwalkul's study. We pause at the ivory door, which opens as the Master greets us and invites us in for our contemplative approach to advancing as a discipleship group in the energies of this zodiacal sign. As we continue our study of the dissipation of glamour and dispelling of illusion as individuals supported by this group, we stand around Master DK and see 3 windows filled with light. We stand in silence as he turns and faces the east. Together, we enter into this point of light.
As Master DK says, to the man, therefore, who undertakes wholeheartedly the process of occult meditation, I would say with all conciseness, know thyself. Proceed slowly and with caution. Study effects. Those who are in preparation for initiation must learn to work consciously with glamour. They must work effectively with the presented truth, ignoring any pain or suffering or mental questioning which is incident to personality rebellion and limitation. They must cultivate that divine indifference to personal considerations which is the outstanding hallmark of the trained initiate. What is required of the individual? 3 stages: practiced meditation, deep reflection upon the nature of thought and its uses, and developed awareness of the light within, established as related activities, habits, and automatic reactions. And when the intention is fixed and the ability to focus has become an almost instinctual reaction, then sound and effective work can be done. To this work must be added persistence and patience.
So let's think of these now in relation to our group service. What then is required of the group? The first 3 stages, together as a group, to have practiced meditation, to have together reflected deeply upon the nature of thought and its uses, and to have developed awareness of the light within, not only ourselves, but the light within the group. These established as related group activities, group habits, and group automatic reactions. And when the intention is fixed and the ability to focus has become an almost instinctual reaction for the group, then sound and effective work as a group can be done. To this work must be added group persistence and group patience.
Master DK's instructions to remember. Exercise the deepest watchfulness in the endeavor to work thus on the astral plane. You are to work in one of the most difficult spheres of activity, perhaps the most difficult to which a disciple can be called, and hence the advisability of working there in group formation. I cannot emphasize too strongly that you are to work as a group and not as individuals. Always watch with care for the undue stimulation of your astral or emotional nature, with consequent and subsequent glamour. Group will. A group of disciples must be distinguished, as I already told you, by poor reason, which will steadily supersede motive, merging eventually into the will aspect of the monad, its major aspect. It is, technically speaking, Shambhala in direct relation with humanity. What, therefore, is the group will in any ashram or master's group? Is it present in any form vital enough to condition the group relations and to unite all into a band of brothers, moving forward into the light? Is the spiritual will of the individual personalities of such strength that it negates the personality relation and leads to spiritual recognition, spiritual interplay, and spiritual relation? It is only in consideration of these fundamental effects of standing as a group in the head's clear light that it is permissible for a disciple to bring into the picture personal sensitivities of thought, and this only because of a group temporary limitation. Silently sound the soul mantram, and in that soul silence fuse and blend your personality will with the will of the soul. I am the soul. I am light divine. I am love. I am will. I am fixed design. My will is now to lift the lower self into the light divine. Such is my will.
Are any of these glamours suggestive to you of your individual response in group formation, in esoteric group service, as a kind of exclusiveness or separativeness that contributes to the group glamour, a hindrance to you and your group? We have reviewed in previous sessions the general categories of glamour. 1, the glamour of destiny. 2, the glamour of aspiration. 3, the glamour of self-assurance, or of what might be called the astral principles of the disciple. 4, the glamour of duty. 5, the glamour of environing conditions, leading frequently to a sense of frustration or of futility or of importance. 6, the glamour of the mind and of its efficiency and its capacity to deal with any and every problem. This leads inevitably to isolation and loneliness. 7, the glamour of devotion, leading to an undue stimulation of the astral body. The man or woman thus glamored sees only one idea, one person, one authority, and one aspect of truth. It feeds fanaticism and spiritual pride. 8, the glamour of desire, with its reflex action upon the physical body. This leads to a constant condition of fighting and of turmoil. 9, the glamour of personal ambition. I would suggest that no aspirant attempt to tackle the problem of glamour as a whole or seek to dissipate all the glamours to which he is susceptible. He is dealing with very ancient evil and with firmly established habits of glamour. They are closely connected with aspects of his daily living, with his sex life, or with his ambitions, with his relations to other people, with his pet ideals and ideas, his dreams and visions. He should choose the glamour that is most apparent and the most hindering at any given time. And there is always one. And for its dissipation, he should work conscientiously if he would lay the foundations for effective service in the dissipation of world glamour. What is currently hindering your progress within group formation? Moving from desire to personal will to soul personality will to group will.
First, that those participating, two things will be apparent to you. First, that those participating in the eradication of glamour must be able to distinguish between glamour and the reality. These often closely resemble each other on a superficial examination. They must be in a position to recognize that an emotional or astral condition constitutes a veil over the truth and is a distortion of the presentation or the appearance of the individual's or the group's expression of divinity. They must, therefore, be capable of vision, clear thinking, and prompt recognition as to what is preventing the materializing of that vision and the accurate reception of the truth. They must also be able to distinguish between a major and a minor glamour. A minor glamour, a passing, evanescent thought form of an easily recognizable nature, does not warrant the use of either of the formulas. Such a minor glamour would be a sense of self-pity in an individual or the glorification of some notable individual by an individual, a group, or a nation. Time and common sense suffice to take care of such a situation. A major glamour affecting the world at this time is the fourth ray glamour of war. Identifying group glamours. I advise that some glamour, which all the group members recognize as a major hindrance to the progress of humanity, be one of the first handled by the group. I would also advise that in the early stages of their work, they deal with a glamour affecting aspirants, and that they do not attempt to tackle the more widely spread and deeply centered glamours of the race as a whole. A glamour affecting aspirants at this time that might be considered: the group glamour of esoteric groups, exclusiveness, specialness, or separativeness that is a hindrance to the effective service as a whole, as part of the new group of world servers. A group is brought together under karmic law, ashramic necessity, and soul direction. Immediately, there is presented to the watching masters an opportunity for the very definite training of some willing aspirants, but also an equally definite point of tension, indicating real difficulty. There is little, in reality, to link these people except inclination, a joint aspiration, and a goal seen and held in unison. The outstanding characteristic of such a group is spiritual selfishness. This statement may surprise you until a close scrutiny of your own heart is undergone, and then I venture to predict that you will discover that it is not divine love of humanity that has enabled you to find your way into the outer group of some ashram, but desire for development, for achievement, and for liberation. The first step, therefore, is to recognize this, and hence the injunction so oft misunderstood: kill out desire. This has to be the first destructive activity of the disciple. Let them develop facility in handling some of the lesser and more easily visualized glamours. Then, as time goes on and facility in the work is gained, the group can pass to the more difficult tasks and handle the glamours further removed from their own orbit of difficulties. When the aspirants and disciples in the group are familiar with the formula and have established a level of ashramic intimacy and occult obedience, the group can move into service in relation to the major glamours. It is surely needless for me to point out that the group members be but those who are endeavoring to keep their own lives free from glamour. I would also add that if a group member is in the thick of glamour himself or herself and is occupied with wrestling with it, he or she should abstain from the group work until he or she has freed himself or herself with the aid of the individual formula.
Remember that the 3 stages of focusing the light constitute a preparatory process. These 3 stages must be somewhat developed before effective use of the formulas can be possible, and those intending to work at the task of ridding the world of glamour must subject themselves constantly to these phases in the art of polarization, if I might so call it. They must have an understanding of the apparatus of thought, of the creation of thought forms, and of the nature of the thinker. They must be emotionally polarized, yet in group work relatively free from astral control. This astral liberation must, to a certain extent, control the choice of those who are to work at major dissipations. And this is the reason that we are taking so much time and practice with the individual formula. The individual who is seeking to break up glamour in his individual life, he should be mentally polarized by decision and effort, even if the emotional nature is for him in any one life the line of least resistance. Those working in group formation will have achieved a measure of mental focus, but for the purpose of the work to be done, they will focus themselves consciously and deliberately upon the emotional plane through their control of their natures. Workers must therefore have practiced meditation, must have reflected much upon the nature of thought and its uses, and must be aware of the light within.
One of the requirements in this group work is a most careful choice of those who are to participate in the work. They must be chosen because they can work together. They must either know each other exceedingly well and be free from personality frictions, or they must be relatively unknown to each other as personalities, but are drawn to each other as sole collaborators in this particular work. They must, as far as in them lies, endeavor to work with regularity so that a rhythm can be set up which will lead to a steady rhythmic impact of the light upon the glamour. They must also adhere faithfully to the formula given. This is one of the initial formulas and is most powerful because it is one of the very first to be used in group dissipation of glamour. This whole procedure is entirely new as far as man is concerned, and the work to be done will necessarily prove hard as it involves an interesting situation. The groups who will do this work of piercing the glamours which dim the vision of humanity and of dissipating them will be the first non-initiate groups to work this way upon the physical plane and to work consciously and with fixed intent. Hitherto, the work has been carried forward by members of the hierarchy, and then only with the idea of holding back the glamours until such time as humanity was ready to destroy that which it had created. Glamours have also been pierced before now by massed effort, carried forward for a long time, and usually without any real conscious understanding. An illustration of this would be the work done by the Church in a diffused and vague way in piercing the glamour of material desire and material good, by substituting the idea of a heavenly substitute. The work that is now planned is dynamic and clear-cut, consciously carried forward, and specific in its impact. It is a definite method of handling and projecting the energy of light with the objective of destroying the impediments of an emotional, mental nature upon the path of return to God. Disciples and aspirants must cultivate the consciousness of cooperation and realization that in service, such as is proposed, they are definitely participating in a hierarchical activity and are, therefore, in a position to render help even if they could not, alone and unaided, achieve the desired results. They can hasten the process by their combined help. The power of united effort upon the physical plane is being realized today on a large scale, and the war effort in all countries has greatly hastened this realization. Are you becoming more assured that you can easily and readily achieve the altitude of the observer and sustain that as the mind held steady in the light on the mental plane, merging and blending the two lesser lights, brain and mind, with soul light? We might ask, how would we know that we have achieved the needed concentration, realization, and relationship? Aspirants have to learn the nature of the will by the power of inner illumination and by certain intelligent recognitions. They learn the nature of the self through the aid of the personality, the shadow or distortion of the divine will. Only when the will of the personality and the will of the soul come together, evoked by love, does the light of the soul dominate the material light of the personality. They pass from the expression of the will, which is purely selfish, self-sufficient, and self-focused, to the grasp of the group will and to the effort to embody that group will. This group will is always concerned with that which is not the will of the separated self. It is the will that, in the last analysis, produces orientation, focus, emphasis, the world of form, and above all else, because of its relation to the world of cause, the world of meaning. The group life as a whole is needed to make possible a somewhat new attitude, this shift in realization away from form and consciousness to the will and life aspect or principle. If only will only think, if you will only use a little will, and if you will only remember that you have a mind, we say to the children of the race and to beginners upon the path of conscious return. Little by little, then, the focus and the orientation shift out of the astral life and from the emotional level of consciousness into the mental, and consequently into the reflection of the world of purpose found in the three worlds. When that stage has been somewhat developed, then there follows, upon the path of discipleship and of preparation for initiation, an effort to grasp and understand the higher aspects of this mental process, and the will aspect of the egoic life begins to influence the disciple. The petals of sacrifice unfold, and the sacred sacrificial aspect of life is revealed in its beauty, purity, simplicity, and in its revolutionizing quality. So let us now, having some assurance that we are able to lift our consciousness out of the lower focus on desire and self-will, personality will, let us align as a group. The act of naming. Let us consider the glamours of the rays as given by Master Dwalkul. Very briefly, we will consider in silence, so that you may find an individual glamour that may be related to the group glamour of exclusivity or separateness in esoteric groups. That is a hindrance to the evolution of humanity and to full participation as part of the new group of world servers.
The glamour of physical strength, the glamour of personal magnetism, the glamour of self-centeredness and personal potency, the glamour of the one at the center, the glamour of selfish personal ambition, the glamour of rulership, of dictatorship, and of wide control, the glamour of the Messiah complex in the field of politics, the glamour of selfish destiny, of the divine right of kings personally exacted, the glamour of destruction, the glamour of isolation, of aloneness, of aloofness, but in particular, the glamour of the superimposed will upon others and upon groups, the glamour of the love of being loved, the glamour of popularity, the glamour of personal wisdom, the glamour of selfish responsibility, the glamour of too complete an understanding which negates right action, the glamour of self-pity, a basic glamour of the second ray, the glamour of the Messiah complex in the world of religion and world need, the glamour of fear based on undue sensitivity, the glamour of self-sacrifice, the glamour of selfish unselfishness, the glamour of self-satisfaction, and the glamour of selfish service, the glamour of being busy, the glamour of cooperation with the plan in an individual and not a group way, the glamour of active scheming, the glamour of creative work without true motive, the glamour of good intentions which are basically selfish, the glamour of the spider at the center, the glamour of God in the machine, the glamour of devious and continuous manipulation, the glamour of self-importance from the standpoint of knowing of efficiency. Ray 4. The glamour of harmony aiming at personal comfort and satisfaction, the glamour of war, the glamour of conflict with the objective of imposing righteousness and peace, the glamour of vague artistic perception, the glamour of psychic perception instead of intuition, the glamour of musical perception, the glamour of the pairs of opposites in the higher sense. Ray 5. The glamour of materiality or overemphasis of form, the glamour of the intellect, the glamour of knowledge and of definition, the glamour of assurance based on a narrow point of view, the glamour of the form which hides reality, the glamour of organization, the glamour of the outer which hides the inner. Ray 6. The glamour of devotion, the glamour of adherence to forms and persons, the glamour of idealism, the glamour of loyalties, of creeds, the glamour of emotional response, the glamour of sentimentality, the glamour of interference, the glamour of lower pairs of opposites, the glamour of world saviors and teachers, the glamour of the narrow vision, the glamour of fanaticism, the glamour of magical work, the glamour of the relation of the opposites, the glamour of the subterranean powers, the glamour of that which brings together, the glamour of the physical body, the glamour of the mysterious and the secret, the glamour of sex magic, the glamour of the emerging manifested forces. I have here enumerated many glamours, but their names are legion, and I have by no means covered the possibilities of the field of glamour.
The preparatory stage that we will do imaginatively today. 1. The act of naming. We face the group members eye to eye and establish a soul-to-soul connection. In silence, we withdraw from personal and world affairs and center on the work to be done, setting up a magnetic field of positive, receptive activity. Silence. The act of protection. We sound the protective formula, the great symbol of light and of consciousness, signifying the vertical light and the horizontal light, the power of attraction and the power of radiation, soul life and souls, making the sign of the cross of divinity, the long arm vertical cross, touching the forehead, we say, as a soul I work in light, touching the center of the chest, and darkness cannot touch me, touching the left eye. I take my stand within the light, I work, touching the right eye, and from that point I never move. Three, the preparatory stages. The act of focusing the lights. A. Focusing the dual personality light of matter and of mind. B. Meditation on soul contact and the recognition of soul light. C. The blending and fusion of the two lesser lights and of soul lights. This is carried forward as a group, each member making their contribution and consciously attempting to visualize the process of blending the triple light, which each contributes into one sphere of light. Regarding focused immovable will, the thought of tension, which Master DK defines as the identification of the brain and soul with the will aspect, and the preservation of that identification, unchanged and immovable in all circumstances and difficulties. The will aspect can be contacted only from the mental plane, and only those, therefore, who are working with and through the mind can begin to appropriate this energy. Hearing the note of the soul, visualizing the light of the soul, the light of mind, and the light of matter, which is brain, merged and blended, recognizing, feeling the intent of the soul. From that high point of soul focus, and using the triple light. Merging and blending this triple light in the group light, the group soul, the realized unity of the souls of all the group members, the great searchlight.
Let us say in unison, the light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. Sounded as the group soul on its own plane, sounded forth by the group soul, the realized unity of the souls of all the group members. Sounded as the soul on the mental plane. sounded as the soul on the astral plane, the soul ready to function as light bearer and distributor of light upon the astral plane. Now the processes of individual and group alignment and integration can be regarded as completed. And when it is really correctly accomplished, each meeting thereafter should see a more rapid integration and fusion and a greater brilliance of the sphere of light thus created. The Om sounded forth by the group soul. The Om sounded as the soul on the mental plane. And the Om sounded as the soul ready to function as light bearer and distributor of light upon the astral plane are all symbolic ways of registering the inner reality and are an attempt to externalize force. For that is what all symbols and symbolic ways of acting are capable of doing. These thus serve to keep the workers at a point of tension. This is an important recognition and should keep the workers from attributing undue power to the form aspect of the simple ritual and aid us in focusing our attention in the world of meaning and of subjective spiritual activity. It will be apparent to you that much depends upon the ability of the group members to visualize clearly as well as to think clearly. Practice naturally tends to perfect both processes. At the close of these three stages, the act of naming, the act of protection, the act of focusing the light, the group members are united as souls, insulated against the attractive power of the glamour, and united as souls, with mind and brain held steady and positive in the light. Their blended light is looked upon by them as a great searchlight, whose beams are to be directed through an act of the will, downward from the mental plane onto the glamour existing on the astral plane, and which has been brought into relation with the group by the very act of naming it. DK says he's giving detail on this matter because the work is a new venture and he is anxious for us to start it with a clear understanding as to how the task is to be carried out. Eventually, this initial work, these three stages, should take 15 minutes, and later not more than 5, excluding the 10 minutes of silent preparation which precedes the formal work. For the group members will get used to working together and will eventually attain the objectives of the preparatory work with great rapidity.
The technique or formula, the mantra of light. Together and in vocal unison, the group says, radiance we are and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. While saying this, the group visualizes the turning of the great searchlight, which they have jointly created by their unified light, onto the glamour to be dissipated, holding the light steady, realizing mentally the work of dissipation it is intended to do. This is called the act of direction. Six. Then follows a pause for a few minutes in which the group attempts to throw behind the searchlight their united, directed, and dynamic will or intent. This carries along the projected beam of light the destructive quality of the spiritual will, destructive to all that hinders the manifestation of divinity. This is done by attaining a united point of tension and the dedication of the individual and group will to the will of God. This is called the act of will and is carried on by each member of the group silently and with a deep realization that all are thus accepted and that it is the group will which is being silently focused. Then together saying, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. Act of projection. Then comes the act of projection and the saying of the words of power, which, again naming the particular glamour which is the subject of attention, and thus bringing it consciously into relation with the focused light, begins the task of dissipation. The power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of exclusivity and separativeness of esoteric groups. The power of our united light negates the quality of the glamour from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind the glamour. Act of affirmation. These words gain strength from the experience of the aspirant and from his familiarity with their use. Act of penetration. Then comes an important aspect of the work in which the group members visualize the gradual dissipation and dispersal of the glamour by the penetration of the light into its darkness. We endeavor to see the glamour disintegrating and the reality emerging, doing this by an effort of the creative imagination. Each will do this in their own way and according to one's own understanding and capacity. Now follows 5 minutes of silence and intensity of purpose, while the group waits for the work instituted to go forward.
You will want to pause the recording in order to allow for the full 5 minutes of silence. At the conclusion of the 5 minutes of silence comes the act of withdrawal. Then follows the group withdrawal of its consciousness from the astral plane and the world of glamour. The group members refocus attention, first of all, on the mental plane. And then the group members refocus attention on the soul plane. I am the soul. I am light divine. I am love. I am will. I am fixed design. Relinquishing all thought of the glamour, knowing that the work has been successfully carried forward. We reorganize ourselves as a group in relation to the kingdom of souls and to each other. Occultly speaking, the searchlight of the soul is shut off. The Om is then sounded in group formation. And then, in order to emphasize that the group work is ended, each group member sounds the Om alone. Saying, so let it be. and help me in my own life to end all glamour and untruth. Master DK goes on to say it will take aspirants some time to gain facility in this work, but it is surely obvious that in learning what is an entirely new technique of service, each step must be mastered and practiced for quite a long time. Every new branch of learning takes some time to become familiar, and this one is no exception. But the effort is well worthwhile, both from the individual angle and as an act of service to humanity. That all the groups may learn to function in the light, and that glamour may disappear from all your lives, so that you may walk freely in that light and use that light for others, is the wish of my heart for you. Patience is a quality of will. It is of the nature of a strict adherence to a fixed intention. At each transition from one civilization to another, each being built upon the cultural seed of the preceding one, after a due flowering of the civilization, we could say that Sanat Kumara could say of Sanat Kumara what has been said of the Christ, that he sees of the travail of his soul and is satisfied. So blind are men and women, that when a civilization comes to an end, when the familiar mode of cultural expression is brought, as is usual, under the hand of the destroyer, humanity regards it as a major disaster and dreads and fears the ruin which usually surrounds such an event. But from the standpoint of the world of significances, progress is seen and the day of fulfillment draws much nearer. Let us close with the words of the old commentary in speaking of the work of those whose dharma it is to dissipate world glamour. They come and stand within the midst of whirling forms, some of beauty rare and some of horror and despair. They stand. They look not here or there, but with their faces turned towards the light they stand. Thus through their minds the pure light streams to dissipate the fogs. They come and rest. They cease their outer labors, pausing to do a different work. Within their hearts is rest. They run not here and there, but constitute a point of peace and rest. That which upon the surface veils and hides the real begins to disappear, and from the heart at rest, a beam of dissipating force projects, blends with the shining light, and then the mists of humanity's creation disappear. They come and they observe. They own the eye of vision. Likewise, they own the right direction of the needed force. They see the glamour of the world, and seeing, they note behind it all the true, the beautiful, the real. Thus, through the eye of Buddhi comes the power to drive away the veiling, swirling glamours of that glamorous world. They stand, they rest, and they observe. Such are their lives, and such the service that they render to the souls of men. He says he will commend these lines to our careful thought. These lines convey to us not only the field of our group service, but also the desired attitude of the personal life of every member of the group. We move on, we move forward together into the light, the penetrating light of the path, with the blessing of the Buddha as we approach together the festival of goodwill in Gemini.